So we are continuing to read from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 18, Maharaj Parikshit, cursed by a Brahmana boy. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vikasa Swaminiti Namine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So in this particular chapter, we will see how Maharaj Parikshit very fearlessly and also he was very bold to face the curse that he received from the son of Shamika Rishi. Well, it's all being the plan of the Lord. Still, Parikshit Maharaj showed that he is completely surrendered soul, and also the discussion between Sutta Goswami and other rishis of the Naimisharanya, how they were very much requesting Sutta Goswami to narrate about the various glories of Krishna Katha, and this whole entire incident of how Parikshit, when decided to accept the reversal that happened in his life, and how he, with enthusiasm, he just decided to go to the bank of the Ganges, which we'll be seeing in the 19th chapter. So the entire chapter very much deals with the reversal that happens to Maharaj Parikshit and how he responded during that reversal. Okay, so this is the first division that we have done. Sutta Goswami begins by describing Maharaj Parikshit's life, which contains wonderful dealings with Krishna and his dealings with Kali. Yeah, basically, in the first few of the verses, you will see how he dealt with, what was his dealings with the Supreme Lord, and also how he had to respond when Kali requested. So that will be summarized. So you will see. Yes, you want to increase a little font here. I hope some of you read the purpose. We will be summarizing some things and be able to follow in that sense in a much better way. Okay. Sutta uvacha yo vai draunyastra viplushto na maturudare mritah anugrahad bhagavatah krishnasya adbhuta karmanah. Krishnasya adbhuta karmanah. So the activities that happened in his life was all so wonderful because Krishna personally protected Maharaj Parikshit. So this is how Sutta Goswami begins. Due to the mercy of the personality of God as Sri Krishna, who acts wonderfully, Maharaj Parikshit, though struck by the weapon of the son of Drona in his mother's womb, could not be burned. So again, Sutta Goswami is reminding about how glorious was Maharaj Parikshit. He was personally protected by Supreme Lord himself. So we can see about the signs of Narayana Parayana. We will be seeing in this verse how Parikshit had all those signs of a great pure devotee. Text 2. Brahmakopatitadyastu takshak prana viplavat na sammu mohoru bhayad bhagavatyarpita shayah. So this is an interesting point in here. Bhagavat Arpita Ashaya. So unto that personality of Godhead, where he submitted completely his consciousness. He consciously surrendered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead in spite of having heard, in spite of having been cursed by the Brahmana, Shringi. So here he is glorifying how glorious you see. So Prabhupada in this purport, you can see here, he just begins the purport like this. A self-surrendered devotee of the Lord is called Narayana Parayana. So this is an important point. A devotee who has completely surrendered himself to the Lord. Such a person is never afraid of any place or person, not even of death. For him, nothing is as important as the Supreme Lord. And thus he gives equal importance to heaven and hell. He knows well that both heaven and hell are creations of the Lord. And similarly that life and death are different conditions of existence created by the Lord. Okay. He knew that Narayana, Krishna, had saved him when he was born in the womb of his mother. and that if he were to be killed by a snake bite, it would also take place by the will of the Lord. The devotee never goes against the will of the Lord. Anything sent by the God is a blessing for the devotee. Therefore, Maharaj Parikshit was neither afraid of nor bewildered by such things. That is the sign of a pure devotee of the Lord. So we can see immediately, if you want to see what is the symptom of a pure devotee of the Lord, he has completely surrendered himself to the Lord. So this we have seen in the previous chapters also. We have seen the example of how Pandavas were so surrendered, how Bhishma was surrendered, how Kunti Maharani was surrendered, how Vidura was surrendered. Whatever that happened in their life, they took it as the mercy of the Lord. And we just saw in the previous chapter discussion between Dharma and Parikshit, and how Dharma also points out that whatever that happens to us in our life, it is the reason for that incident is because of the previous karmic influence. And we are reaping the results of the previous karmic influence, and Lord has a plan, and we just have to accept whatever that happens to us in our life, it is for our good, and we may be purified. And in the case of pure devotees, the Lord personally interferes. So that's what we are seeing here. And we can see in Srila Bhakti-vaibhava Course songs where he shows that Sharanagati. In fact, one whole section is having it in his songs, whatever songs he has written. A section of songs has been titled Sharanagati. In that he expresses his humility, his dependence, all the 6 angas of surrender is exhibited in those songs. What are all the things that are favorable, what are the things that are unfavorable, how we have to be always dependent on Krishna, how we have to see Krishna as the only protector, how we have to be meek and humble, and how we have to give ourselves completely to Krishna. All the 6 items of surrender, Bhakti-vaibhava Thakur is discussing in those songs. So in that one of the songs he says, Manasa Deho Geho Jo Kichumor Arpilu Tua Pade Nanda Kishore. So in that one line he mentions that it is better to be born as a worm in the house of a devotee rather than being born as Lord Brahma, being averse to your service. So that's an interesting point. We can see what is the difference between an attitude of a devotee and an attitude of a karmi or a jnani. Karmi always wants something from the Lord. Lord, you do this for me, do that for me. You please help me to acquire good wealth, money, wife, dhanam dehi. What Prabhupada says, famous one he quotes, dhanam dehi, bharyavati dehi, then rupam dehi. So all those things, I want money, I want beautiful women. This is what always the karmis ask the Lord. And what the jnanis do, the jnanis, they are giving up the material attachment. The world is temporary and all those things. And then what they want to finally give up all the sufferings and merge into the impersonal Brahman. Whereas Vahu, the devotee, responds. The devotee, he responds, whatever may be the situation, my dear Lord, it's your plan of the Lord. You want me to go to hell? No problem, I'm ready to go. If I just want to be in your service. I always want to remember your lotus feet. Whatever may be my situation. That's how a devotee responds. Okay. Text 3. Utshrijya sarvata sangam vijñāta jita sangstitihi vayyasakerjihau shishyo gangayam swam kalevaram. Furthermore, after leaving all his associates, the king surrendered himself as a disciple to the son of Vyasa. Thus, he was able to understand the actual position of the personality of Godhead, and at last he gave up his material body on the bank of the Ganges. So, what are the 3 signs we have seen from Parikshit? Amazing qualities that we have seen. One, in this verse, it is mentioned that he just gave. Can you imagine? You are a big king. You are the king of the entire universe. Like you call Chakravarti. You are the complete controller of the entire universe, and you have been said that in 7 days you are going to die. But still, it's not so easy. Can you imagine the Prime Minister of India? He has to go and then sit in the bank of the Ganges, and he's going to do fasting. It's something, the whole world will be just trembled to hear this. Of course, India, so it's not the whole world. Everyone will be wondering what is happening. So can you imagine Parikshit will be such a great personality? He just left everything and he went to the bank of the Ganges. So this shows his great renunciation spirit. Immediately he decided the best thing to do is to simply 24 hours, 24x7. Here 24x7 is applicable perfectly for Parikshit. 24x7 he was ready to absorb himself in Krishna's service. It's not that just that 7 days he was all the time absorbed in Krishna's service, in memory of Krishna, remembering Krishna. Now he completely decided to go. So that's one symptom. Second symptom we saw, he never cursed back. The second verse it explains that he took the curse of Shringi, he just took it as Lord's plan. Then what is the first verse? What was explained? He was protected by the Lord himself in the womb. He's not some ordinary person, great personality. Otherwise the Lord himself will come. Who will come? He personally came and protected Parikshit. So he's some exceptional personality. So these are three symptoms we see of Maharaj Parikshit. So what Prabhupada calls him as? Ajita. Narayana Parayana. That's what we are discussing. Yes. Okay. Now Prabhupada in the text 4 is teaching us something, how to avoid misconceptions at the time of death. We will see here. Very nicely Prabhupada is presenting it. Nottama shloka vartanam jushatam tatkatamritam syat sambhramontak kalepi smaratam tat padambujam sambramo antakalepi smaratam tat padambujam. This was so because those who have dedicated their lives to the transcendental topics of the personality of Godhead, of whom the Vedic hymns sing, and who are constantly engaged in remembering the lotus feet of the Lord, do not run the risk of having misconceptions even at the last moment of their lives. So here he's saying, this was so because. Which was so because? Yeah, he's being Narayana Parayana. How was this? He was being Narayana Parayana because he was completely absorbed in the transcendental topics of Bhagavan. You remember when Parikshit was just going, he was just touring the world just to check is there any influence of Kali. Where, you remember that particular verse where when he heard that the Lord, Supreme Lord came as a messenger, he came and then served, he protected you in the womb. And he was almost, when he was hearing, he was completely eyes closed, he was so much absorbed in thoughts of Krishna. That was his glory all the time. Although he was engaged in various other activities, he was always remembering Krishna. That is something not so easily achieved. One has to practice. Of course, Parikshit Maharaj is a pure devotee. Even other sadhakas, it is a lesson that we need to learn. We need to practice regularly this principle. Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mam anusmara yudhyacha mayyarpita mano buddhir mame vaisya sasankshayah. Krishna teaches this in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8. He teaches that all the time, remember me in whatever activities you do with your body, mind and intelligence. With mind and intelligence absorbed in me, he says. It's not easy. But at least that's why we should offer prayers at the beginning of the day. Before we perform an activity, we offer it to the Lord. And as we just keep doing all these things, then we will become more and more conscious in every activity that we do. When we sing, when we do our services, when we read, when we cook, when we wash. Any activity we do, we will always be in touch with the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. In that way, we will remember that we need to be connected with Krishna. And because ultimately, we have to be Krishna conscious. Ultimately, we have to remember this principle of smartavyam satatam Vishnu vismartavyam najatuchit. So that is why all these rules and regulations, all these readings, all this, everything is meant to raise ourselves to the consciousness. And we can see here, Parikshit was in that consciousness, and Prabhupada here is giving a very nice, the translation goes very wonderfully. He says that because of his all 24 hours remembrance of the lotus feet of the Lord, what was the result of it? What was the result of that? Just see the verse. Yeah, there was no misconception at the time of leaving the body. Oh, maybe, I should have worked for some 5 more years. Why did I join the Hare Krishna movement? Oh, I took a wrong decision. Maybe, actually I should have, studied this. I should have done this. Oh, I should have spent time. I should have gone to the United States of America. Oh, there are so many, or, I should have taken the path of jnana. I should have, because we have not completely absorbed ourselves. So if you have not absorbed ourselves completely, then all kinds of misconceptions will just haunt us. So that is our point, okay? Now there are several examples from the Shastras where you can see some people who are apparently devotees in the beginning, and later they deviated. Why? Because they didn't have clear conception of Krishna consciousness, and they didn't absorb themselves in that proper process. Then, as we have in the path of Shurasya Dhara, Nishitam Duratyaya. So it's very dangerous, in the path of spiritual life. It's like walking on the edge of a sword, or walking on the edge of a blade or a knife, whatever you call it. If you are careless, then there will be a cut. So we have to be very careful in the practice of Krishna consciousness, keeping always the goal intact. That's why we have our program designed in such a way that morning we have Bhagavatam class, evening we have Gita class, in between we have Kirtans, and then we are engaged in the service, we are engaged in preaching activities. Everything we remember, Krishnarte Akhila Cheshta. That's the whole point. This perfection of life is possible for one who has learned the actual transcendental nature of the Lord from the Vedic hymns sung by a liberated soul like Shukadeva Goswami or someone in that line of disciplic succession. There is no gain in hearing the Vedic hymns from some mental speculator. When the same is heard from an actual self-realized soul and is properly understood by service and submission, everything becomes transparently clear. You see throughout the Bhagavatam from beginning to end, this point is being stressed so much. We have to hear from the authenticated source and we have to hear it, assimilate it, contemplate it, digest it, practice it, then we will be overflowing with realizations. I will again repeat this statement. We have to hear, we have to give oral reception from to whom? To an authenticated, bona fide representative who comes in parampara. And submissively serve him, hear from him. And not only hear the message, think about it, contemplate it. We have Bhagavatam class. After Bhagavatam class, we hear and then we heard this in this year and then we leave it in the other year. We discuss with devotees. This is actually association of devotees. Hey, what was that point? Oh, today we heard about Gadadhar Pandit. Oh, amazing activities he performed. How much he was dedicated. What is a Guru Bhakti? So many points we discuss. Then we discuss. Then we churn it more. And then after we discuss about it and then we think, how is there anything I can apply it in my life? Oh, I may face some situation. How do I put it in my life? How I put it in practice? And then we try thinking about some of the points. And then we see sometimes we are attached to some things, we get angry to something, we get angry with some things. And then we think about, before that we should think about it, but Maya is so powerful, it may carry away. But if we regularly practice like this, then what happens? Then our consciousness becomes enlivened. Then we have become fixed. Then we may get realization. Then somebody may offer us, that's why you see a devotee, if somebody comes and offers you chocolate, he's not interested. Because he already has realization, what is there in this? It is not offered to Krishna, I don't want. Somebody is calling to watch us, let's go for a latest movie. No interest, what to do, sir? There is no interest. Why? Because there is some realization. The more, maybe in the beginning stage, the devotee will be free from many gross allurements. He will become free from gross allurements. More subtle allurements, more purification, he will become free from more subtle allurements also. And when he becomes a pure devotee, no attraction at all for anything mundane. So this is the science. Prabhupada is repeating here. So again I repeat the last sentence. When the same is heard from an actual self-realized soul and is properly understood by service and submission, everything becomes transparently clear. So this is the point. So I made a point that the more we hear about Krishna, the more our material hankerings vanish. Just one devotee today morning just told me that he was very mental before darshan, and then he said, I have to come for darshan, I have to push myself. So he came for darshan, he was in Guru Puja, he was trying to keep himself enthusiastic, and then he sat in the Bhagavatam class, he was feeling sleepy, then he was pushing himself, and then he was trying to hear. Then he said that the more he was trying to give attentive hearing, he was hearing, and then whole mood, he said, it completely got changed after that. At the end of the Bhagavatam class, he said that he was morose before, and after the Bhagavatam class, he was so much inspired. So there is one shloka, maybe I will show you some other time, where the prachetas, they are saying that at least at that moment when you are engaged in Krishna Katha, you completely forget yourself. It could be Kirtan, it could be hearing about the glory of the Lord. You completely forget yourself, you get absorbed, you are free, you become free from mundane thoughts. At least that moment when you are engaged. So the more we are engaged, the more we are free from mundane thoughts. So this is the secret. Okay. So texts 5 and 6. As long as the great powerful son of Abhimanyu remains the emperor of the world, there is no chance that the personality of Kali will flourish. So here Prabhupada is speaking about the purport also, good principles of good government. How a government, we discussed a lot in the previous chapters also. Because of the effect of Parikshit's perfect ruling, Kali could not show its tail, or he cannot infiltrate into the masses of people because they were following the instructions of Kali very seriously, Parikshit very seriously. So that's why wherever there is effective management, keeping in base of the hearing and chanting, that management will be the best management, because the goal is centered on Krishna. The goal is centered on Krishna means immediately there will be no the exact word. Yeah, there will be no sinful activities, because the four principles of dharma will be maintained, and all these things they are able to follow because of trying to please the Supreme Lord. And the Parikshit was dealing like that. He was able to control the situation like that. Just moving to text number 7. Now, in this text, an interesting point is discussed, how Parikshit Maharaj, he was a realist and he was not an idealist. Idealist means there may be certain things you may have it as ideal, but you have to see in the time, place and situation, and you have to see how to apply that idealism in that particular situation, how to practically do that activity. And you can see here, text 7. Nanudveshti kaling samrat saranga iva sarabhuk kushalanyashu siddhyanti netarani kritani yat. Maharaj Parikshit was a realist, like the bee who accepts only the essence of a flower. He knew perfectly well that in this age of Kali, auspicious acts produce good effects immediately, whereas inauspicious acts must be actually performed to render effects. Kushalan yasu siddhyanti. Okay. So he was never envious of the personality of Kali. Netarani kritani. So he was not at all envious of the Kali. Now let's see what Prabhupada says in the purport. So now, so far we have seen how Parikshit has been glorified as Narayana Parayana. And then the next 3 verses, a discussion about what is the proper way of conducting a government, principles of proper way of conducting a government is discussed, wherein that was possible because Parikshit was very serious and he was very much committed to rule the kingdom, and he kept the Kali at the bay. Now in this verse, Suta Goswami glorifies Maharaj Parikshit as what? Saranga, the word is used. One has to be Saragrahi. One should know how to take the essence. That is only an experienced Vaishnava can know that. So now let's see what Prabhupada is speaking about the purport. In this fallen age, it's an important purport, please pay attention. Because the living beings are in an awkward position, the Supreme Lord has given some special facilities to them. So by the will of the Lord, a living being does not become a victim of a sinful act until the act is actually performed. In other ages, simply by thinking of performing a sinful act, one used to become a victim of the act. Think about it. Now if we are in that situation, my God, what will be my head will break into thousands of pieces. So many thoughts are going in the mind, and it is not immediately, you don't have the immediate effect of it. Only when you just perform it, you have the effect. Okay, he says that the previous age that you have become a victim, but on the contrary, a living being in this age is awarded with the results of pious acts simply by thinking of them. You may even just in your heart think, oh, let me, for this marathon, let me distribute 500 Bhagavad Gitas. Immediately, you get so much pious credits. That's the glory of Kali Yuga. Because you thought something very favorable to please the Lord. And immediately you are blessed. And it would be very nice if you can distribute also 500 Gitas. Not just in the thought, you think about it and you glorify, say a few words and then you walk away. But that's the, at least, sometimes they say, okay, even if you cannot do anything really good, at least say a few good words. At least say something, positively. Say something instead of just all the time just lamenting. Say some few good words. People used to say, right? So Kali Yuga is very effective. Okay. Maharaj Parikshit being the most learned and experienced king by the grace of the Lord, was not unnecessarily envious of the personality of Kali, because the king did not intend to give him any chance to perform any sinful act. The king protected his subjects from falling prey to the sinful acts of the age of Kali, and at the same time he gave full facility to the personality of Kali by allotting him some particular places. Again you can see the third. So first point we saw in Kali Yuga, there is, in the previous Yugas, if you just think about a bad activity, immediately you get reaction. But in Kali Yuga, even if you think of something doing good, you get credits for that. And if you think of something bad, no problem. As long as you are not going to execute it, no issues. The third point here, it's being mentioned here about the Kali. At the end of the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is said that even though all nefarious activities of the personality of Kali are present, there is a great advantage in the age of Kali. One can attain salvation simply by chanting the holy name of the Lord. Thus Maharaja Parikshit made an organized effort to propagate chanting of the Lord's holy name. And thus he saved the citizens from the clutches of Kali. So this is the beauty. So he was very much conscious that the greatest activity to be performed in the age of Kali is to engage people in Sankirtan. By engaging them in Sankirtan, the Kali can be kept at bay. Kali cannot infiltrate. Okay, see here what Prabhupada says. In the beginning of the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is also said that by the recitation of Srimad Bhagavatam, the Supreme Lord becomes at once arrested within one's heart. What does that? Do you remember any verse for this? Supreme Lord is arrested within one's heart. The great rishis of the Bhakti-vaibhava school. Very famous verse. The Lord is arrested. Immediately you should be able to recollect. Go back to the first chapter. First chapter is over. We have crossed now 17 chapters. The first chapter, second verse. Come on, very famous one. Yeah. What is the last line of that? Dharma projita kaitavotra parvo nirmat saranam satam vedyam vastavam atra vastu shivadam tapatrayon moolanam. After tapatrayon moolanam, Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Kingva Parairishwaraha Sadhyo Hridyavrudyate Trakritivi Sushushruvis Takshana. Sadhyo Hridyavrudyate means what? The Lord is arrested in the heart. To whom? When somebody gives proper oral reception. That's what Prabhupada is exactly translating here. In the beginning of the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is also said that by the recitation of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Supreme Lord becomes at once arrested within one's heart. These are some of the great advantages of the age of Kali. So why here it is said that Parikshit was a realist? He did give a place to Kali, but he sufficiently protected the masses of people. He had to accommodate Kali because that is also the Lord has sent him, so he could not completely abolish him. But he did. How he did? By keeping Krishna Katha in center, or keeping Krishna in the center. So he was a realist. So that's why he says Saram. He was the Saram. What is the right word used here? Saram. Saranga. Right? Saranga. He was Sarad book. Yeah. One who accepts the substance. Nice. Okay, let's proceed. Okay, now again, and the text 8, further warning is given how one will not be carried away by the age of Kali. Maharaj Parikshit considered that less intelligent men might find the personality of Kali to be very powerful, but those who are self-controlled would have nothing to fear. So Parikshit also systematically is teaching his praja that you have to follow the 4 relative principles. Engage yourself in Krishna's service. And he knew whomsoever followed it, Kali cannot touch them. So that's why in our Krishna consciousness movement, we have the 4 regulative principles to follow. And we also preach about these 4 regulative principles, and we also simultaneously request people to engage in the chanting of Hare Krishna. And when people do this, they will not be diseased by the effect of Kali. Okay. The king was powerful like a tiger and took care of the foolish, careless persons. See here, Prabhupada, in the very first line, is making this point, is stressing this point. Those who are not devotees of the Lord are careless and unintelligent. So from this we can come to a simple conclusion that a devotee He understands the nature of this material world, and he is very careful and vigilant in his response to the reactions in this material world. But a non-devotee, he is very careless. He just gives importance to his body and senses, and he suffers. So that's why Prabhupada is saying, unless one is thoroughly intelligent, one cannot be a devotee of the Lord. Those who are not devotees of the Lord fall prey to the actions of Kali. So what does thoroughly intelligent means? What we have to do?
We have to engage in Krishna service.
Huh?
We have to hear Srimad.
That's the point. We have to engage ourselves in Krishna service, chant the holy names, hear Bhagavatam. That is what intelligence means. Intelligence means submitting ourselves to the Guru Parampara. That is intelligence. That's what is mentioned here. Okay, now I'm just going to move to the text number 10. Now, Suta Goswami, the sages in Naimisharanya, they start glorifying Suta Goswami. How wonderful he is, how great he is, how he is really a qualified speaker. So they are going to establish that. And also, the sages also, in the next 7 verses, we will see they will be glorifying about Krishna Katha. What is the power of hearing Krishna? Hearing from Krishna and glorifying Krishna. Okay. Text 10. Yaya Katha Bhagavatah Kataniyoru Karmanah Gunakarma Shraya Pumbhi Sansevyasta Bhubhushubihi. Those who are desirous of achieving complete perfection in life must submissively hear all topics that are connected with the transcendental activities and qualities of the personality of Godhead, who acts wonderfully. Here again he speaks about the glory of the Lord. Is the right word that being used is Guna Karmashraya Pumbihi. Urukarmanaha. That is the point. Urukarmanaha here means that the Lord performs activities, wonderful activities, which is very captivating. And so his katha is very captivating. Okay. Let me go to the next verse. He says that, see, Suta Goswami, when you speak Krishna Katha, it is very captivating. Because the activities of Lord Krishna are very captivating, and when you present it, it is just like nectar for us. It is the right word that is used here. It is, yeah. Yastvam shanksasi Krishnasya martyanam amritam hinaha. We are mortals, but for the mortals, the Krishna Katha acts like what? Amritam. That's what he speaks. Okay, now I am going to text 12. In text 12, we can see here some interesting facts are being presented, and also we can see there is a contrast of Karma Kanda and Bhakti Yoga. Okay, and also we can see about how the people who are hearing the Bhagavatam should be attentive, and also how the speaker should be qualified enough to speak about the Bhagavatam. Okay. Here we can see such a good example. Sometimes the audience may not be attentive, sometimes the speaker may not be effective. But in the case of Parikshit Maharaj and Shukadeva Goswami, you have a potent speaker, you have a potent hearer. So when there is a potent speaker and potent hearer, what is the consequence of it? It becomes relishable. When there is a potent husband and potent wife, when they come together, when they conjugate, there is a possibility of a child being born. But either one of them, if they are not potent, then there will be no children. Okay. Karmanyasmin anashvase dhuma dhumratmanam bhavan apayayati govinda padapadma swam madhu. We have just begun the performance of this fruitive activity, a sacrificial fire, but we are without certainty of its result because of the many imperfections in our action. Our bodies have become black from the smoke, but we are factually pleased by the nectar of the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead, Govinda, which you are distributing. Now, this is an interesting thing. You see, the sages on one hand, they are performing, on one side, they are performing the Karmakanda sacrifice. And then as a result, what has happened? We will see in the upcoming verses also. Their face have, that's what exactly we said here, no? Our bodies have become black from the smoke, but we are factually pleased with the nectar of the lotus feet of the personality of God. So that was the effect of the Karmakandiya sacrifice that they were performing. But what is the result of hearing the Bhagavatam? It is very nectarian. That's what is mentioned here. It becomes very nectarian. Okay. I'm going to read the good result of tilling the paddy field depends on providential rain, and therefore the result is uncertain. Similarly, performance of any kind of sacrifice in this age of Kali is also uncertain. Unscrupulous, greedy brahmanas of the age of Kali induce the innocent public to take part in such uncertain sacrificial shows without disclosing the scriptural injunction that in the age of Kali there is no fruitful sacrificial performance but the sacrifice of the congregational chanting of the holy name of the Lord. Now this is the real sacrifice to be performed in this Kali Yuga. All other sacrifices will not give the best results. And also we did hear just recently how there are so many details involved in various sacrifices. You need qualified brahmanas, you need pure ingredients, you need them to chant the mantras very attentively, and also the yajnas are very performed for long hours. We don't have stamina of people. So many things are involved, and also so much money is also involved. Nowadays, so many brahmanas are also, some of them are cheating in doing this yajna, that yajna, this prayashita, that prayashita, and at the end of the day, they take a lot of money from your pocket. This is what is happening. First of all, hardly anybody is going for such prayashita, and even if you go to for such prayashita, there are people who are cheating also. That's also there. Okay, again, the end of this purpose says, in other words, nothing performed for spiritual realization or for material benefit can be successful without devotional service to the Lord. So, this is an interesting point. So, if whatever activity you perform, if it does not culminate in devotional service, it is Shrama eva hi kevalam. Okay. Now, in the next 4 verses, you will see the same theme here. This is a very important verse to be memorized also, very famous verse from the Bhagavatam. Tulayamalavenapi na swargham na punarbhavam bhagavat sangi sangasya martyanam king uta shishaha. Here this verse glorifies the association of a pure devotee. The value of a moment's association with a devotee. Tulayama lavena. Lava matra sadhu sangha, we have heard, no? Lavena, lava. Lava, in fact, when the calculation says that 1/11th of a second, it says very, very short duration of time. Even for such a short duration of time, if you get the association of a pure devotee, our life becomes successful. Just it reminds of an incident of one stewardess or air hostess in the flight. Somehow or other, she was fortunate enough to arrange and give some milk for Prabhupada, and also she took a little bit of the what was that? I think it was a popcorn or puff rice, correct? Puff rice. She had an opportunity to take little remnants of the pure devotee Srila Prabhupada, and then later it was found, after years, when devotees went for distributing books, they found that she had become a devotee of the Lord. Somehow or other she came in touch with devotees, they took. So this is a mercy that she got from Srila Prabhupada. Just a momentary association, that's all. And so much mercy. So many incidents are there like that. So the value of a moment's association with a devotee of the Lord cannot be compared even with the value of attaining the heavenly planets or liberation from matter. And what to speak of worldly benedictions in the form of material prosperity, which are for those who are meant for death. Bhagavat Sangi Sangasya Martyanam Kim Uta Sishaha. Ashisha, worldly benediction. Kim Uta, what to speak of? What to speak of that? Okay, Prabhupada points out in the purport. In other words, for the pure devotees of the Lord, the material pleasures obtainable in the heavenly planets are like a phantasmagoria. Akasha Pushpayate. Who says this? Prabodhananda Saraswati. He says that It is just this material enjoyment, or going to the Swarga planets, or any kind of material facility. It is just, it's like horses' eggs, or like the flowers in the sky. That's the reality. Specifically, devotees look at it like this. And because devotees are already liberated from all material conceptions of pleasure and distress, they are factually liberated even in the material world. This means that the pure devotees of the Lord are engaged in a transcendental existence, namely in the loving service of the Lord, both in the material world and in the spiritual world. As a government servant is always the same, either in the office or at home or at any place. So a devotee has nothing to do with anything material, for he is exclusively engaged in the transcendental service of the Lord. Since he has nothing to do with anything material, what pleasure can he derive from material benedictions like kingship or other overlordships, which are finished quickly with the end of the body? Devotional service is eternal, it has no end because it is spiritual. Therefore, since the assets of a pure devotee are completely different from material assets, there is no comparison between the two. So I have a question for you. In this part, at the end of the purport, Prabhupada is speaking about Yoshit Sangi and Bhagavat Sangi. Who is called a Yoshit Sangi?
One who associates with women.
One who associates with women, correct. Who is more dangerous? One who is very much in association with women, or the woman herself?
You should
One
worship
who is
Sangi.
more-
Yeah, because the point is that one who is always associating with women, he always thinks about women, he is always thinking about sense gratificatory ideas, and he is more dangerous because he will pollute the consciousness of the practitioners. Okay, again here, Sutta Goswami is glorifying. The personality of God, Lord Krishna, is the exclusive shelter for all great living beings, and his transcendental attributes cannot even be measured by such masters of mystic powers as Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma. Can anyone who is expert in relishing nectar ever be fully satiated by hearing topics about him? So nobody can be satiated because it is ever growing. So Prabhupada immediately quotes this famous verse from the from Padma Purana. Ravante yogino nante satyananda chidatmani iti ramapade nasau param brahma vidhiyate. The mystics derive unlimited transcendental pleasures from the absolute truth, Parang Brahma Abhidhiyate, and therefore the supreme absolute truth, the personality of God, is also known as Rama. In mundane affairs there is a law of satiation, but in transcendence there is no such satiation. How many gulab jamuns we can eat? 7, 8, 9, 10 if you're very expert. And if somebody is, let's say a very special person, maybe you can eat 15, maybe 20. After that you cannot. You don't even want to look at that, isn't it? The very color of it or the very shape of it, you may be feeling it to memorize, delete it from your memory for next 2 weeks. Because you are satiated, you are saturated. But the glory of Krishna consciousness, is so powerful, you will never get tired. The more you hear, the more you absorb, the more the bliss is increasing. What Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says? Padam, not Padam, what is that? Chetota Pramarjanam Bhavamaha Davag Nirvapanam Shreya Kairav Chandrika Vitranam Vidyavad Jivanam Anandam Buddhivardhanam Pratipadam Purnamrita Swadanam Sarvatma Snapanam. You fully immerse yourself, you will be just ever increasing. This Anandam Buddhivardhanam, the bliss is ever increasing. That is the power of the prowess of Krishna consciousness. It is ever increasing. Okay. It increases the bliss, and it is ever increasing. That's the point. Okay. And another in this purport, Prabhupada is giving one more point. Since the Lord is transcendent and his attributes are transcendental, such discourses increases the receptive mood of the purified audience. So you don't feel bored. 2 hours, 3 hours, 3.5 hours, and then also tell me some more. It's very captivating. Vayam tuna vitrupyama uttama shloka vartaye yat shrinvatam rasajnanam swadu pade. So even those who are in the beginning stage, those who are in the advanced stage, those who are very advanced, they're relishing the more rasika aspects of the Lord is amazing, activities. They never feel tired. They say, please go on, no problem. Tanno bhavan vai bhagavat pradhano mahatamaikkanta parayanasya harerudharam charitam vishuddham shushrushyatam no vitanotu vidvan. O Suta Goswami, you are a learned and pure devotee of the Lord because the personality of God is your chief object of service. See, for whomsoever the chief object of service, Bhagavat Pradhano, it is mentioned here, right? That is the interesting thing. Why Suta Goswami is glorified here? Bhagavat Pradhano. For him, he kept the chief personality in his life. He kept Supreme Lord as the chief. Mahatamaikkanta Parayanasya. And why he is still glorified? Ekanta Bhakti to the Supreme Lord. That is also the qualification Suta Goswami had. So because you are being filled with these qualities, you please Shushrutam na vitanotu vidvan. So kindly describe the glories of the pastimes of the Supreme Lord. We are very eager to hear. So what is this here? It is being spoken. What is being spoken? What is it that you learn? What is the quality you learn here? Okay, I gave a hint also. It describes about the quality of a speaker. Bhagavatam, someone should speak. Spiritual subject matter, someone should speak. What is the quality required? The speaker on the transcendental activities of the Lord should have only one object of worship and service. Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that is the whole key. So then you can Prabhupada immediately contrast an ideal speaker and a bogus speaker, professional speaker. A professional speaker and a materially absorbed audience cannot derive real benefit from such discourses. Professional speakers make a show of Bhagavata Saptaha for the sake of family maintenance, and the materially disposed audience hears such discourses of Bhagavata Saptaha for some material benefit, namely religiosity, wealth, gratification, senses of liberation. One person came here to Salem. No, there's one particular community. They are in Bhagavata Saptaha. They will take some particular sections and then they will just narrate some incident and like Rasa Leela, Krishna stealing the butter, then wherever there are some pleasing sections and like that. But they will never hear those sections of where Shukadeva Goswami is discussing about the forest fire of material attachment. That chapter will never be discussed. They will never discuss about this. Either right in the second canto, there is there is a heavy discussion on Shukadeva Goswami discusses about how to keep our heart pure, how we have to be simple, how this material attachment binds us. There will be no discussion of such things. Fifth canto, Rishabhadeva's teachings. There is no Rishabhadeva's teaching in their Bhagavatam. They have a different Bhagavatam book. that is completely eliminated. There is no section of Dhritarashtra quitting the Sabha and then going to the forest. Vidra's sharp words. So somehow they have a different Bhagavatam book. We are very curious to know what Bhagavatam they are having. So that's the whole point, because Bhagavad Saptaha, now he says few things and then he himself is in tears and then the whole audience are in tears and then some Bhajamana Radhe Govinda, some song they sing and then everybody, all audience, they just dance. It's a nice dance they do and then immediately tears flows and then some claps and then some laughing and then after they go home, drink coffee, tea, watch the T20 cricket match, and life goes on. This is the problem. There is no change in the heart. But even there may be a new devotee who has joined ISKCON for just 1 week or 10 days. You maybe go out and distribute books. He will say, hey, you are not this body, you are a spirit soul. This material world is temporary. You may die anytime. Better you surrender to Krishna. Take the message of Bhagavatam. He can benefit so much. Other than a very big professional speaker who can just very charmingly, melodiously sing the Bhagavatam verses, and so many nice stories he can say from Mahabharata, Ramayana. But at the end of the day, both the speaker and ourselves will remain in this material world. That's what will happen. O Suta Goswami, please describe those topics of the Lord by which Maharaj Parikshit, whose intelligence was fixed on liberation, attained the lotus feet of the Lord, who is the shelter of Garuda, the king of birds. Those topics were vibrated by the son of Vyasa. Okay. There is proper discuss about Prakrita, Madhyama and Uttama devotees. You can read those purports. I'm just moving to text 18. Okay, I'm not going to start text 18. Before that, I'll just read text 17. It's a nice verse. Tanna parang punyam asangvritartam आख्यानम् अत्याद्भुतयोगनिष्ठम् आख्यायनन्ता चरितोपपन्नं परीक्षितं भागवताभिरामम्. Thus, please narrate to us the narrations of the unlimited, for they are purifying and supreme. They are spoken to Maharaj Parikshit, and they are very dear to the pure devotees, being full of bhakti yoga. So this is the point. Why it is very pleasing to the pure devotees? Again, the glory of pure devotion is established here. Parikshitam Bhagavata Abhiramam, it is mentioned here. Particularly very dear to the pure devotees, because it contains the Adbhuta Yoganishtam. Adbhuta Yoganishtam. Yoganishtam here refers to the Bhakti Yoga. So that is what is discussed here. And we will see in the next 5 verses where Suta Goswami is going to speak about the effect of hearing Krishna Katha and how it purifies. Because again, the Bhagavatam is all about narrations of Krishna. That's the whole thing. Everything is related with Krishna. Suta first explains the process of purification through hearing about Krishna. He then relates Krishna's exalted qualities. So these are the next 5 verses. We will see how Suta Goswami is explaining what is the real qualification of a speaker, and how one is purified also is going to explain. Suta uvacha aho vayam janma bhritodhyah sma vriddhanuvrityapi viloma jataha daushkulyamadhing vidunoti shigram mahattamanam abhidhana yogaha. O Suta Goswami, Sri Suta Goswami said, "O God, although we are born in a mixed caste, we are still promoted in birthright simply by serving and following the great souls who are advanced in knowledge." So this is a very important point here. So what is being established here? Did you observe?
Birth is not
His birth is
important.
not the
Yeah.
consideration by
So birthright is not the consideration, but by engaging in the service of the great souls, simply by serving and following the great souls. Even by conversing with such great souls, one can without delay cleanse oneself of all disqualifications resulting from a lower birth. Just by a conversation with them will result in what? Will result in more inquiry, will result in some or other engagement in the service of the Supreme Lord. That's the whole point. Kiba vipra kibanyasi sudra kene na he Krishna tattvaveta se guru hoy. So this is the teaching. What is the qualification? The qualification is that it doesn't matter what is your background. If you are absorbed in Krishna's service, in Krishna Tattva, and if you have a good understanding of that, then you are qualified to preach. And that is the whole point. So now here, Srila Prabhupada in the purport, it's a very long purport. I am just going to just discuss one particular aspect. Prabhupada is speaking, the transcendental science of the science of Krishna has to be learned from the authorities. And when one becomes conversant in the science and preaches it, he becomes still more qualified. So Suta Goswami had both the advantages, and thus undoubtedly he was completely freed from all disqualifications of low birth and mental agonies. This verse definitely proves that Suta Goswami's inferior birth did not cause either Sri Shukadeva Goswami to refuse to teach him about the transcendental science of the sages of Naimisharanya to refuse to hear lessons from him. Was there any discussion like this before in the previous chapter? You remember?
Vidur.
Yeah. So in that there was a discussion. Then also there's one more place there was a discussion. Same. Suta Goswami only was glorified. Remember? This means that thousands of years ago there was no bar to learning or preaching the transcendental science because of inferior birth. The rigidity of the so-called caste system in Hindu society became prominent only within the last 100 years or so, when the number of Dvijabandhus or disqualified men in the families of higher caste increased. Now we will see in this chapter, at the end of this chapter, we will see what was the cause of the downfall of the Dvijabandhus or the Dvijas, how they became Dvijabandhus. The nice reason has been given, if you have read that. And Prabhupada, he makes it more interesting here in this purport. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to purify the whole atmosphere of the polluted world by sending qualified preachers all over the world to preach the chanting of the holy name of the Lord. And it remains with the Indians to take up this task scientifically and thus do the best kind of humanitarian work. Here Prabhupada gives an important message for the Indians. He says that, come on, stop going to Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Stanford University, Princeton University, this university, that. Come on, get absorbed yourself in the message of Srimad Bhagavatam. Study it, practice it, preach it. It has to be given. So many people are suffering in this world. It has to be given. And then Prabhupada here makes a mockery here. What is happening? But instead, what is happening is making a mockery. And thus the best kind of humanitarian work. What is the best kind of humanitarian work? Rather than performing some stereotyped, imitation, philanthropic work, such as opening hospitals. The mental diseases of the present generation are more acute than bodily diseases. This is Prabhupada's move. It is quite fit and proper to take up the preaching of the Srimad Bhagavatam all over the world without delay. Mahatamanam Abhidhana also means a dictionary of great devotees or a book full of the words of great devotees. Such books of the words of the great devotees and those of the Lord are the Vedas and allied literature, specifically the Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay. 19. And what to speak of those who are under the direction of the great devotees, chanting the holy name of the Unlimited, who has unlimited potency. The personality of Godhead, unlimited in potency and transcendental by attributes, is called Ananta. Kutaf punar grinato namatasya mahatamai kanta parayanasya yonanta shaktir bhagavan ananto mahad gunatvat yamananta mahuhu. So in this verse, the key stress you can see in this verse is about Mahatamaikanta. The great devotees are being mentioned here. And what is that? Is something special about him? Aikanta Parayanasya. Exclusively they are absorbed themselves in the service of the Lord. Right? Because of such great attributes, what they are doing, they are always engaged in the service of the Unlimited. That is what is being mentioned here. And Prabhupada in the purport, he speaks about hearing the holy name from these pure devotees. What is the effect of hearing from these pure devotees? What happens? Because of their offenseless chanting, one will be able to surrender to the Lord completely. So Prabhupada mentions that in the purport. This offenseless chanting indicates that one has fully understood the transcendental nature of the holy name and has thus surrendered unto the Lord. And one has to give oral reception to such devotees. Okay. And again in this purport, so much stress Prabhupada is giving about hearing about the holy name of the Lord from a pure devotee. So that's why you see Prabhupada in his short talk about the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, in the Prabhupada Duni, he says, even a dog can take part in this chanting. This chanting of the Hare Krishna is not what Prabhupada says. He says that it is not from it's not an artificial imposition on the mind, he says. And then he says it's natural, even a dog can take part in this chanting. And it should be heard from the lips of the pure devotee, Prabhupada says in the short class. That's the whole secret. Then we will be making tremendous progress. Then, because he says, in the last line he says, the devotee is surcharged with the potency of the Lord, even fractionally. The disqualification due to lower birth cannot stand in the way. This is a beauty. You may say, oh, he's lower birth, but he has taken initiation from a bona fide devotee who comes in parampara. Because that pure devotee is surcharged with Krishna consciousness, by his electrifying speech and his touch, he will be able to purify their dependence from any disqualifications they may have. Next 7 verses describes about how Maharaj Parikshit was insulted by Shamika Rishi. Now, so far we have seen the background, how Suta Goswami was speaking about the glories of Maharaj Parikshit, and he also spoke about how he dealt with Kali, and also he further spoke about what is the importance of hearing Krishna Katha, and how there is no the birth is not a criteria. And in the last few verses, what we have seen, he is explaining about the process of purification one undergoes. The process of purification one undergoes before he elevates himself by hearing Krishna Katha. So that is what we have seen so far. Now, after having said about the glories of the Bhagavatam, hearing about the Bhagavatam, hearing about Krishna Katha, now he comes to the actual incident, what happened. Okay. Once upon a time, Maharaj Parikshit, while engaged in hunting in the forest with bows and arrows, became extremely fatigued, hungry, and thirsty while following the sage's stags. While searching for a reservoir of water, he entered the hermitage of the well-known Shamika Rishi and saw the sage sitting silently with closed eyes. The Supreme Lord is so kind to his pure devotees that in proper time he calls such devotees up to him and thus creates an auspicious circumstance for the devotee. Maharaj Parikshit was a pure devotee of the Lord, and there was no reason for him to become extremely fatigued, hungry and thirsty, because a devotee of the Lord never becomes perturbed by such bodily demands. But by the desire of the Lord, even such a devotee can become apparently fatigued and thirsty just to create a situation favorable for his renunciation of worldly activities. So on one hand he says there was no need for him to become thirsty, but the Lord, to create a situation, to bring this devotee close to him, what he does, he is creating a situation where it appears like Parikshit was thirsty, and because of that he could give up all the attachments and he could renounce. Further he says, one has to give up all attachment for worldly relations before one is able to go back to Godhead. Okay. Now let's see some interesting verses in relation to this. Okay, there is a teaching by Kapila. Kapila speaks, this is from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 30, Text 1. As a mass of clouds does not know the powerful influence of the wind, a person engaged in material consciousness does not know the powerful strength of the time factor by which he is being carried. Now you see how the time is acting on Parikshit. It's completely, the whole situation is changing. Then another verse we'll see. Whatever is produced by the materialist with great pain and labor for so-called happiness, the Supreme Personality as a time factor destroys, and for this reason the conditional soul laments. Text 3. The misguided materialist does not know that his very body is impermanent and that the attractions of home, land and wealth which are in relationship to that body are also temporary. Out of ignorance only he thinks that everything is permanent. I'm just reading this verse just to show that we have to make some endeavor to come ourselves closer to Krishna. Meaning, we have to renounce the material things, and that will happen only when we come closer to Krishna. If we do not voluntarily do it, then we will be forced to do it. That's why we read those verses. Body is going to shatter. You may lose your job. You may lose your near and dear ones. Anything can happen to us in our life. So we need to be aware of the temporary nature of the material world, and we should be able to align ourselves with the plan of the Lord, the desire of the Lord. Then our life will be much better. Okay. And thus, when a devotee is too much absorbed in worldly affairs, the Lord creates a situation to cause indifference. You see? Here, you see in this purport, Prabhupada is pointing out that the Lord created this situation. Actually, he is also pointing out that one has to give up the attachment. Prabhupada is pointing out. The Supreme Lord never forgets his pure devotee, even though the latter may be engaged in so-called worldly affairs. Thus, the Lord sometimes creates an awkward situation and the devotee becomes obliged to renounce all worldly affairs. So, this is an interesting thing. So, here you can see, Lord creates an awkward situation for his pure devotee. Or we can even say another theme from this point, that the Lord creates a situation so that the devotee will detach himself from worldly affairs. Right? That is what the observation that we have here. The devotee can understand the situation by the signal of the Lord, but others take it to be unfavorable and frustrating. That is very interesting. A devotee When he looks at this situation, then what a excellent arrangement by the Lord. He looks at it like that. But a non-devotee, he curses the Lord, he curses the relatives, curses the situation. Why this happened to me? Why this happened to me? He cannot even digest it. Maharaj Parikshit was to become the medium for the revelation of Srimad Bhagavatam by Lord Sri Krishna, as his grandfather Arjuna was the medium for the Bhagavad Gita. Very interesting, huh? Bhagavad Gita was spoken to Arjuna and Bhagavatam is spoken to Maharaj Parikshit. That is very interesting. Had Arjuna not been taken up with an illusion of family affection by the will of the Lord, the Bhagavad Gita would not have been spoken by the Lord himself for the good of all concerned. Now this is the whole point. In fact, the whole discussion is about all this. Why all these things happen? Because Bhagavatam has to be spoken. That is why. Okay, here is another interesting verse which also speaks about how we need to wake up from as iron as the power to burn when red hot in the association of fire, so the body, senses, living force, mind and intelligence, although merely lumps of matter, can function in their activities when infused with a particle of consciousness by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As iron cannot burn unless heated by fire, the bodily senses cannot act unless favored by the Supreme Brahman. So why I just pointed out this verse is that we have to voluntarily, go forward to the fire of Krishna consciousness. We cannot, how long we are going to just, hold on to material things. We have to submit ourselves to the fire of Krishna consciousness. Then what happens? We will be, although we may be very, very rusty, we will be completely purified, and as the nice iron gets attracted to the magnet, we will also be completely attracted to the process of Krishna consciousness. Here is another verse which also brings to highlight an interesting point. Within the material world, one's material body is always subject to birth and decay. Similarly, the life where prana is harassed by hunger and thirst. The mind is always anxious. The intelligence hankers for that which cannot be obtained. And all of the senses are ultimately exhausted by constant struggle in the material nature. A person who is not bewildered by the inevitable miseries of material existence and who remains aloof from them simply by remembering the lotus feet of the Supreme Person of Godhead is to be considered Bhagavata Pradhana, the foremost devotee of the Lord. It's interesting, huh? Smritya Harer Bhagavata Pradhanaha. Maharaja Nimi, he speaks to the nine Devendras. So why I read this verse? So what is the difference between a devotee and a non-devotee? The devotee understands everything and he takes full shelter of the Supreme Lord. Okay, now let's move to text 26. The Muni's sense organs, breath, mind and intelligence were all restrained from material activities, and he was situated in a trance apart from the three: wakefulness, dream and unconsciousness, having achieved a transcendental position qualitatively equal with the Supreme Absolute. So this is the point, that the Rishi was completely absorbed in trance. That's why he couldn't relate to the incident, what was happening. The sage in meditation was covered by the skin of a stag, and long compressed hair was scattered all over him. The king, whose palate was dry from thirst, asked him for water. Okay, then he didn't receive the water. Now Prabhupada here in this verse, he speaks about, as we heard before, he speaks about the codex of proper reception. The law of reception, this is text number 28. The law of reception, purport I am reading. The law of reception in the course of the Vedic principle states that even if an enemy is received at home, he must be received with all respects. Whether we will do it, this is what the Smriti Shastra says. He should not be given a chance to understand that he has come into the house of an enemy. When Lord Krishna, accompanied by Arjuna and Bhima, approached Jarasandha in Magadha, the respected enemies were given a royal reception by King Jarasandha. The reception law enjoins that a poor man who has nothing to offer his guest should be good enough to offer a straw mat for sitting, a glass of water for drinking and some sweet words. Therefore, to receive a guest, either friend or foe, there is no expense. It is only a question of good manners. So on one other Prithumaya section, purport, Prabhupada says that even if, let's say, you don't have anything to offer, nothing you have, at least with folded hands you can say, Hare Krishna, welcome, smiling words. That itself is very pleasing to the guests and they will understand. But if you just ignore, that's very bad. So here, Parikshit Maharaj, because of the one hand you can say that because of the Lord's plan is one hand. Other hand you can say Parikshit was apparently he was in modes, which cannot be, modes cannot touch him because he's a pure devotee. Definitely it has to be concluded as a Lord's plan. So he just, and it was not, also another point also we can see here, there was nothing wrong also for Parikshit to get angry at that time. Can you imagine, he's the king of the entire universe. When he's coming to your place, one hand he should not have got angry. Another hand, come on, I need some water, come on, respond. That was this thing. So, from various angles it can be seen. Okay, now you see Prabhupada discusses that in the purport. He was not an ordinary guest, nor was he an enemy of the Rishi, and therefore the cold reception by the Rishi astonished the king greatly. As a matter of fact, the king was right to get angry with the Rishi when he needed a glass of water very badly. To become angry in such a grave situation was not unnatural for the king, but because the king himself was not less than a great saint. You see the reason Prabhupada is quoting here. Did you observe? Because he was not less than a great saint, his becoming angry and taking action were astonishing. But by the will of the Lord, the circumstances were so created that they became ways to the king's becoming unattached to family connection and governmental activities, thus becoming a completely surrendered soul unto the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. Well, Parikshit, if it was for Parikshit like that, what to speak of us? So he says that you have to say goodbye to all the activities and absorb yourself completely in hearing and chanting. So a situation was arranged for the Parikshit like that. And he has the very nice statement by Prabhupada. Now he says, the merciful Lord sometimes creates such awkward positions for his pure devotee in order to drag the devotee towards himself from the mire of material existence. So he says that he has to be dragged. And yesterday also we heard, the lecture, Prabhupada was quoting that how Prabhupada said while he was giving the lecture that I could have become a big millionaire by my medical business, but Lord smashed all the ideas. Prabhupada is in the lecture, he says. So Yasyaham anugrahanami harishe tadhanam shanai. For the pure devotee, he does it. Another Lord also does various arrangements to devotees who are advanced. He knows to whom, how much dose to give to whom he knows. He will not try some things with some simple, because he knows he may not be able to hold, he may not be able to stand. So he knows what is the level, how much to test his devotee knows. But outwardly the situations appear to be frustrating the devotee. The devotee of the Lord is always under the protection of the Lord, and in any condition, frustration or success, the Lord is the supreme guide for the devotee. The pure devotee therefore accepts all conditions of frustrations as blessings from the Lord. So that's the point, that the more we absorb ourselves in the service of the Lord, the more we give ourselves, then what happens? We can also be acting as instruments in the service of the Lord. It's a simple philosophy, Ye yatamam prapadyante tam sataiva bhajamyaham. If you're going to be at distance, the Lord will also treat us accordingly. The more we go close to the Lord, the more the Lord will use us in His service. Okay, here it is mentioned that because unprecedentedly the king directed the anger and envy towards the Brahmana's sage. I am now moving to text number 30. When leaving, the king, being so insulted, picked up a lifeless snake with his bow and angrily placed it on the shoulder of the sage. Then he returned to his palace. Text 31. While returning, he began to contemplate and argue within himself whether the sage had actually been in meditation with senses concentrated and eyes closed, or whether he had been feigning trance just to avoid receiving a lower Kshatriya. Okay. Now I have a question for you. What do you see from this incident? Parikshit is written. The incident, he threw the snake and now he is meditating on on the incident. Oh, whether he was really in meditation or he was not in meditation. What are your observations from this?
He was contemplating whether he did right or wrong. Whether he took the action right or wrong.
Yeah.
And he was thinking that really he was meditating this age or not.
Whether he was really meditating or not.
Pretending.
Yeah. What do you infer from this incident? I'm asking. After this meditation, he's just contemplating. What is any lesson that we learn? One point I was just thinking, both the side. Just a lesson to be learned. Here, Maharaj Parikshit is a pure devotee. But before throwing the snake, there could have been some thought. I'm just saying, in our life, before we perform, sometimes we may have time. Purposefully, we may go and do something. We may have our own justification for having done that act. But if that act is done in a very proper way, that will have profound effect. But if it is done in a very premature way, we will have we will have reactions which will be adverse reactions. You understand? So now, Prabhupada in the purport, he makes the point here that repentance comes into the mind of a good soul. This is another interesting observation. Prabhupada is making really a good observation. See, you will even see there are some people when you are very cutthroat, you don't even bother. Sometimes you see you do a mistake and later you come and then say, oh, I'm very sorry I made this. That means some piety is there. But if someone does not even have any such kind of repentance, some people may repent just because he was told, hey, go and ask sorry to the Prabhuji. Okay, sorry Prabhu. He was like a dead man, He's saying and immediately understand because he has been told he's coming and then doing it. But you can see a difference when somebody really feels from the heart, he asks for forgiveness, he asks for sorry, he begs. So that's a good symptom. That's a chance for improvement. Okay. But then also, sometimes somebody does the same mistake 1,000 times, and 1,000 times he's coming and asking for forgiveness, which is a Vaishnava may be compassionate. Prabhupada remember the incident in Mayapur where there was one thief. First time he stole the money, and then Prabhupada just don't leave it. Give him a chance. Second, I think third time, 2 times or 3 times, I don't remember, maybe second time. Third time, and the same thing this person did, Prabhupada said that no, I can't do anything about it, take him to the police. Because he understood that it's going to cause trouble to the community of devotees. So, compassion, Prabhupada felt that he has to be corrected. He has to he has to be rectified and he has to improve the situation. Now, this is another situation. Now, the point here is nice point Prabhupada is making here. Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur and Srila Jiva Goswami do not believe that the king's action of throwing the snake on the Rishi was due to his past misdeeds. That's not the case here. The arrangement was so made by the Lord just to call the king back home, back to Godhead. Simple, straightforward. According to Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur, the plan was made by the will of the Lord, and by the will of the Lord, a situation of frustration was created. The plan was that for his so-called misdeed, the king would be cursed by an inexperienced Brahmana boy infected by the influence of Kali, and thus the king would leave his hearth and home for good, making possible his connection with Srila Shukadeva Goswami. So this is the whole thing. All the incidents are happening to make Parikshit meet Shukadeva Goswami, so that Shukadeva Goswami could speak the Bhagavatam. Okay, I already said about this point that the Lord will know how much difficulty to give to which devotee, whom to use as in his service, how much one will be able to bear. So that's why sometimes you see every one of us in this world, we all are going to get different kinds of tests. Okay, when you want to make progress in spiritual life, we are going to get different tests, and our tests will be to such an extent that we will be able to pass the test. It's not that we are going to get some test which will be completely out of ours, which is beyond our capacity. The Lord knows how much to give, what to give, but if we are sincere, if we are really submitting, surrendering, pushing ourselves, we will be able to pass the test. This is the whole point. But when we are in the conditioned state, we will not be able to see it. So that is where the faith plays a major role. If we are very faithful to Guru Sishya Parampara and to the process of Krishna consciousness, we will be able to cross the difficulty. Okay, now I'll just read the last section in this purport of 31. Thus, as mentioned above, the king's distress condition was certainly unprecedented. The devotees like Maharaj Parikshit are powerful enough to forbear such distresses caused by the will of the Lord, and they are never disturbed. The situation in this case was therefore all planned by the Lord. So this is the conclusion of this entire purport. Okay. Now the rest of the 6 verses deals with how Shringi cursed Maharaj Parikshit, and how also Shringi's father Shamika Rishi, he lamented for his son's foolish action. And also another interesting observation we can see, someone takes ownership of the wrong act that is being performed. It's a very important principle in the practice of devotional service. We make a mistake, it's easy to escape and shrug off the shoulders, like we don't have any connection with that. But if we honestly accept our mistake, and if you identify if you take responsibility, and we further make sure that we will not anymore commit such mistakes, that sounds a real good attitude of a devotee. We will discuss about that. Okay. Text 32. The sage had a son who was very powerful, being a Brahmana's son. While he was playing with the inexperienced boys, he heard of his father's distress, which was occasioned by the king. Then and there the boy spoke as follows. Because the age of Kali was seeking an opportunity. I'm just reading one particular section. Because the age of Kali was seeking an opportunity to spoil the cultural heritage of the 4 orders of life, the inexperienced boy gave a chance for the age of Kali to enter into the field of Vedic culture. You see, this is where the deterioration started. Hatred of the lower orders of life began from this Brahmana boy under the influence of Kali, and thus cultural life began to dwindle day after day. The first victim of Brahmanical injustice was Maharaj Parikshit, and thus the protection given by the king against the onslaught of Kali was slackened. So here we could see a valid reason for the declination of the Brahmanas. So Shringi was attacked by Kali, and so Shringi's response to the whole incident was very bad. Okay. Oh, just look at the sins of the rulers who like crows and watchdogs at the door perpetrate sins against their masters, contrary to the principles governing servants. This is a very heavy statement by Shringi. This shows that he is very inexperienced and he also lacks culture. Are you able to follow what I'm saying here? He completely lacked culture. He didn't know who is Parikshit, what a great personality and how wonderful devotee he is. And he just saw an apparent situation and then he just spoke 2 heavy words. Agamya dasanam dwarapanam sunam iva. He says, he used a very heavy words like dogs. That's a very bad word to use about any big personality. Prabhupada speaks about it in the Prabhupada. Prabhupada says that herein Shringi, a qualified son of a great Brahmana, attained the required Brahmanical power both by birth and by training. But he was lacking in culture because he was an inexperienced boy. You see? So we may know mantras, we may know to chant shlokas, we may know to paka pronunciation, everything. But the essential culture, essential dealings in particular situation, this you gain the experience by staying with advanced devotees. So this Shringi was we didn't develop that sufficiently. Now we see very clearly Prabhupada writes in the purport. By the influence of Kali, the son of a Brahmana became puffed up with Brahmanical power and thus wrongly compared Maharaj Parikshit to crows and watchdogs. That was very bad. The king is certainly the watchdog of the state in the sense that he keeps vigilant eyes over the border of the state for its protection and defense. But to address him as a watchdog is the sign of a less cultured boy. Thus the downfall of the Brahmanical powers began as they gave importance to birthright without culture. So specifically young boys, they should know how to speak to elders, how to deal with devotees, how to deal with respectable people. It's a very important etiquette to be learned. So here Prabhupada makes it very clear. Thus the downfall of the Brahmanical powers began as they gave importance to birthright without culture. So what is the reason for the downfall of the Brahmanical culture, of the Brahmanism? It says birthright gave importance to birthright, birth, and culture was not at all considered. What is being practiced? What are all the rules and regulations of the Brahminical culture that was ignored? So downfall of the Brahmana caste system in the age of Kali, and since Brahmanas are the heads of the social order, all the orders of society also began to deteriorate. This beginning of Brahminical literation was highly deplored by the father of Shringi, as we will find. So that's an important aspect. And you see, he further speaks again, heavy, very bad statement. So Prabhupada speaks about it again in the next verse. He says that on what grounds can dogs enter the house and claim to dine with the master of the same plate? This is a very heavy statement. He compared the king to a watchdog and thus concluded it was wrong for the king to enter the home of a Brahmana and ask for water from the same pot. It's a very wrong understanding. So the Kshatriyas who are Raja Rishis, you cannot just tell them, they are Kshatriyas, Brahmanas, they are very great. When somebody has this understanding, it's completely foolish. On the other hand, we can see the conversation between Kardama Muni and Manu. Have you read that in the third canto of Bhagavatam? Amazing. Kardama Muni is compared to a great Brahmana. And Swayambhu Manu, a great Rajarishi. Now, Swayambhu Manu very much glorifies Kardama Muni. And Kardama Muni glorifies, he says that Kardama Muni, he says that you are all great personalities. Without your meditation, without your service to the society, the whole society, we are all sense and joyous. Like that he says, Swayambhu Manu. And then Kardama Muni, he says that no, you are, unless you are the people who are actually protecting the entire nation, you are to see that the dharma is being established, you are protecting the rishis to perform the yajnas, you are the one who are helping in seeing that the transcendental knowledge is distributed properly to the masses of people, you are seeing that the Shravanam and Kirtanam is happening properly, you are seeing that the prajas are fed sufficiently so that they are hale and healthy and they could engage in the service of the Lord. So great. This is the proper mood of reciprocation or cooperation between the Brahmanas and the Kshatriyas. This is how the reciprocation should be. Not that just one other just pointing out fingers, claiming one to be, I am the superior, you are not the superior. That's a very important, very bad way of dealing. You understand? Okay. The dog is certainly reared by its master, but it does not mean that the dog shall claim to dine and drink from the same pot. This mentality of false prestige is the cause of downfall of the perfect social order. And we can see that in the beginning it was started by the inexperienced son of a Brahmana. As the dog is never allowed to enter within the room and hearth, although it is reared by the master. Similarly, according to Shringi, the king had no right to enter the house of Shamika Rishi. According to the boy's opinion, the king was on the wrong side and not his father, and thus he justified his silent father. Now, this is another bad thing. He has made a improper act. Having performed an improper activity, you should at least keep quiet. But rather, what he is doing is justifying. Sometimes we see this happens in the karmic schools, And just quickly, some example came to my mind. Sometimes the teacher may be very efficient, and there are some 150 students. Okay, everybody is able to understand the concept. They are able to catch what is being explained. But one fellow is too smart. He doesn't attend the class properly. He is not focused in the class. His mind is just roaming around here and there. And then what he does when there was a feedback that was asked for. This fellow says, actually, the presentation style of this teacher, he is not able to actually pinpoint exactly what is being given. His analogies are not good. He's not well prepared. And he's not sufficient enough to give this knowledge. And then, they are just wondering, 149 students, they are able to get the point. But this fellow alone is not able to get it. The point is that, he could have just said that, I was inattentive, I was not able to do it, I'll try to improve. That is okay, that would have been fine. But rather he comes up with some 50, item list, one after other. These are the causes, these are the causes, these are the causes. And then he's putting the blame directly on the teacher. This is what is happening in the karmi schools, many places. Well, also, on the other hand, in the karmi schools also, There are some other things also happen. Teachers are also, they are just, they just looking at their watch and they know how much the salary is credited or not. That's another thing. But there are certainly certain people are like this. So like, I was just thinking about this Shringi here. Shringi done an abominable act, and then now after having done an abominable act, you will see later he will just a little bit repent, but it was too late. It's not foolish. But immediately when you are in gunas, you don't want to accept the blame on your side, you just put it on the opposite person. Okay. After the departure of Lord Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead and supreme ruler of everyone, these upstarts have flourished. Our protector being gone, therefore I myself take up the matter and punish them. Just witness my power. You see here, this is what is the point I was saying. Having already you done a mess, now he's using Krishna as the mouthpiece. Krishna is gone. You see what an adharmic act has happened. You understand? This is the complete nonsense. This is what we call it as nonsense. The personality of Kali Yuga therefore was seeking the opportunity to establish authority, and by the grace of the Lord he found a chance in the form of the puffed up inexperienced son of a Brahmana. The little Brahmana wanted to show his prowess in destruction, and he had the audacity to punish such a great king as Maharaj Parikshit. He wanted to take the place of Lord Krishna after his departure. These are the principal signs of upstarts who want to take the place of Sri Krishna. You understand what is meant by an upstart? What is meant by an upstart? Yeah, he has no qualification. Suddenly, that's why sometimes you see, it's always very dangerous. Someone who has never seen the difficulties, who has never gone through, someone, just today he was a pauper, and tomorrow morning you see him to be a millionaire. These are called upstarts. These people have no ethics, they don't have value for money, they don't have value for culture, and they will be real troublesome people. Okay. An upstart with a little power wants to become an incarnation of the Lord. There have been many false incarnations since the departure of Lord Krishna from the face of the globe, and they have misled the innocent public by accepting the spiritual obedience of the general mass of people to maintain false prestige. In other words, the personality of Kali got the opportunity to reign through the son of Brahmana Shringi. Okay, now in the verse 36, now Shamika Rishi's father is going to speak. The son of the Rishi, his eyes red hot with anger, touched the water of the river Kaushika while speaking to his playmates and discharged the following thunderbolt of words. Now, Prabhupada in the purport makes a nice point. Any sane man would have prevented him from doing such great harm to all human society. By killing a king like Maharaj Parikshit just to make a show of acquired Brahmanical power, the inexperienced son of a Brahmana committed a great mistake. Now the problem is, his friends were all his playmates. They were all not sufficiently experienced also. But if there had been an experienced person there, what he would have done? Stop it, he would have said. I just remember this Jagai Mother Brahmana. Whatever, Jagai Mother, both were crazy. But somehow or other he was inspired. Jagai was inspired on Mother. Is it like that? Or is it opposite? What was it? Okay, anyway, so he was stopped from making a big sin of further beating Nityananda Prabhu. But here, situation was very bad. Nobody was there to advise. Okay. Okay. Now another thing that we learn from the next verse. Okay. The Brahmana's son cursed the king thus: "Oh, on the 7th day from today, a snake bird will bite the most wretched one of the dynasty, because of his having broken the laws of etiquette by insulting my father." So Prabhupada writes in the Prabhupada. Thus the misuse of Brahmanical power began, and gradually nearly all the Brahmanas in the age of Kali became devoid of both Brahmanical powers and culture. The Brahmana boy considered Maharaj Parikshit to be Kulanghara, or the wretched of the dynasty. But factually the Brahmana boy himself was so, because only from him did the Brahmana caste become powerless, like a snake whose poisonous teeth are broken. The snake is fearful as long as his poison teeth are there. Otherwise he is fearful only to children. The personality of Kali conquered the Brahmana boy first, and gradually the other castes. Now please look into this part. The whole scientific system of the orders of society in this age has assumed the form of a vitiated caste system, which is now being uprooted by another class of men, similarly influenced by the age of Kali. One should see to the root cause of vitiation and not try to condemn the system as it is. without knowledge of its scientific value. What do you learn from here in this topic? Very amazing point Prabhupada is speaking. Okay, I'll give you a practical example, but you think about it. I'll just wait for another 5 seconds, 10 seconds, if you can get to know what Prabhupada is saying here. Prabhupada is saying here that because one Brahmana boy did a mistake, now what is the thing? Because some Brahmanas have done a mistake. So now what is happening in the modern world? All the entire Brahmanas are bogus. The caste system itself is bogus. Now, by completely abolishing the caste system, how things are? It's all very nice, very wonderful. Everything is going wonderful. No, it's more problematic, more chaotic. But they are thinking that we should just abolish the system given by God. No need of varna, no need of ashrama, everyone is together, everyone is equal. It's again another mess. What was that I was thinking? Yeah, now let's take within ISKCON itself. Now there were some problems in the Gurukula before. Okay, now for that matter, the whole idea of we should never have Gurukulas, the whole idea is, it's not a proper idea. Because that was a system set by Krishna, and moreover Srila Prabhupada wanted this system to flourish. And he felt that by this system of giving children right from young age this message of Krishna consciousness, then they will naturally become devotees. Srila Prabhupada also pointed out that this modern educational system is without knowledge of God is practically soul-killing civilization. It's a slaughterhouse, right? So Prabhupada wanted the children to be Krishna conscious right from young age. So there are so many advantages. So there were some mess, there were some problems. Now completely abolishing the system is not the intelligent way of handling it. So that's what here is Prabhupada is identifying. Just because this Shringi and others made some mistake, now the entire system, abolishing the entire system is not the best idea. Prabhupada is pointing out. Okay. So that's I made a point that so identify the root cause of failure of any system and set it right, rather than condemning and eliminating the system itself. Right? Can you say that? Yeah, that's the whole point. Okay. I'm just going to take some 10 more minutes. Maybe we may finish this chapter. There's not much to do. Okay. Thereafter, when the boy returned to the hermitage, he saw the snake on his father's shoulder, and out of his grief, he cried very loudly. Okay. Now, the last section of this chapter, Samika Rishi prayed to the Supreme Lord to forgive Shringi for his foolishness. Okay. Let's move to text number 41. Okay. The father heard from his son that the king had been cursed, although he should never have been condemned, for he was the best amongst all human beings. The Rishi did not congratulate his son, but on the contrary began to repent, saying, Alas, what a greatly sinful act was performed by my son. He has awarded heavy punishment for an insignificant offense. Now Prabhupada says in the purport, the king may order hanging of a culprit son of a Brahmana, but he does not become sinful for killing a Brahmana. Even if there is something wrong with the king, he is never to be condemned. A medical practitioner may kill a patient by mistaken treatment, but such a killer is never condemned to death. That's what many times happens. Some minister or somebody, already is having a heavy disease, and the doctor is treating. He's doing his best, but he could not be saved. So what happens? They will first find out who is the doctor. We will kill him. He is our minister. How did he allow him to die? But what then? What's his point? Okay. In the Vedic way of life, the king is trying to become a Raja Rishi or a great saint, although he is ruling as king. It is a king only by whose good government the citizens can live peacefully and without any fear. The Raja Rishi would manage his kingdom so nicely and piously that his subjects would respect him as if he were the Lord himself. So the point is, for such a small mistake, the foolish boy, he cursed Parikshit to die from the snake bird. So Shamika Rishi was repenting for the mistake that was done by his son. So this example I discussed some time back also. Gopinath Patnaik, he was a little bit the son of Maharaj Prataparudra. He became too aggressive, and then he wanted to just kill Gopinath Patnaik by putting him on the chanka. So that was not the proper thing. Okay, let's. Okay, there were again a few other lessons that I made a note. One other point that I felt was, if this boy Shringi, if he had been little careful, it was a small mistake. He would have, but the small mistake he made it into something very big. He exaggerated it so much, and you gave a heavy punishment. So sometimes we also, practically in our life also, sometimes somebody may, to err is human, that we know. So somebody may do some small mistake, something may happen. That then we should not, we should see the gravity of it. We should see how to handle it, what to do, and better to consult experienced people and then deal with the situation. Rather than take law in our hands and do something crazy. And there is no point in repenting later. That's also another thing we see here. Repenting later for the mistake that we commit. So, two other points that I am just sharing with you. One is making a small mistake into something very big, and then another thing is repenting after having. It's a good thing. It's anyway good to repent, but you could have also a little bit considered, right? You could have considered, because you knew about Shastra. You could have just analyzed what is right, what is wrong. And that is possible only when in our day-to-day life we start to think it's a very important practice in our life to start looking at things from the perspective of Shastras. So Shastra Chakshu is an important way of looking at things. Looking at things from the perspective of, is it, if I had to respond to my spiritual master, how I will respond? Is it for my sense gratification or is it for Krishna's pleasure? Like that we have to start looking at things, and there will be some sanity. And in fact, even in some situations, it will be very difficult for us to take decision. So take shelter of advanced devotees. They will be able to put us in right perspective. Okay. So now Shamik Rishi is saying, your intelligence is immature and therefore you have no knowledge that the king, who is the best amongst human beings, is as good as the personality of Godhead. He is never to be placed on an equal footing with common men. The citizens of the state live in prosperity, being protected by his unsurpassable prowess. My dear boy, the Lord who carries the wheel of a chariot is represented by the monarchical regime. And when this regime is abolished, the whole world becomes filled with thieves, who then at once vanquish the unprotected subjects like scattered lambs. So this is what happens, right? And we saw what happened in the case of Vena, right? What happened? Vena, when he came to power, and of course at the time also some atrocities were going on, but when the rishis killed him, then things became more worse. Okay, here Prabhupada is making a point here. One trained monarch is far better than hundreds of useless ministerial rogues. And it is hinted herein that by the abolition of a monarchical regime like that of Maharaj Parikshit, the mass of people become open to many attacks of the age of Kali. They are never happy in a much advertised democracy. Nice point, huh? Okay, Prabhupada again in this verse is speaking about different kinds of sins being committed, how people perform in the absence of king, how many other abominable activities go on. I'm just going to read that particular section for the purport. The so-called Democrats capture the administrative machine without assuming responsibility for the prosperous condition of the citizens. Everyone captures the post for personal gratification, and thus, instead of one king, a number of irresponsible kings grow up to tax the citizens. It is foretold herein that in the absence of good monarchical government, everyone will be the cause of disturbance for others by plundering riches, animals, women, etc. That's what literally this verse says. Okay, here is another interesting purport by Prabhupada, because these are all the same theme about the monarchy and about the democracy. In the absence of a monarchical regime, we are reading purport for text 45. Okay, 45. In the absence of monarchical regime, the general mass of people will be an unwanted population like dogs and monkeys. As the monkeys are too sexually inclined and the dogs are shameless in sexual intercourse, The general mass of population born of illegitimate connection will systematically go astray from the Vedic way of good manners and qualitative engagements in the castes and orders of life. Prabhupada is really banging here. The Vedic way of life does not allow any man to be like the monkeys and dogs, following Mammon's philosophy of simply devoting oneself to economic development for sense gratification. So that is a problem. So when the administrators are not God-centered, all they know is roti kapda makan, how to just earn money, how to have good shelter, and that being the center of their lives. So then Shamika Rishi says that actually he does not deserve to be cursed at all, and whatever that he has done is actually there is no mistake. That's what he says. Although all the Brahmanas were aloof from the incident, still by the childish action of a Brahmana boy, the whole world situation was changed. Thus Rishi Shamika, a Brahmana, took responsibility for all deterioration of the good orders of the world. It's a very interesting point, no? So to take ownership, to take responsibility in a situation where there's a mistake that happened by one of our wards, it's the right thing. So let's say we are going in a car, okay? There is some small accident, okay? Let's say the mistake is on our side, okay? So what is the best thing to do? Best thing to do is jump from the window, run super fast, get into the bushes and hide, and just don't deal with the situation at all. It's a very foolish thing to do. Better be there. Let's say, supposing the opposite party, someone has got hit. What do you do immediately? Immediately we should, as specifically practicing devotees, we should, whatever is required, we should immediately take that person to the nearby hospital and treat him, help him. And we should say that, okay, we will whatever damages that has happened to the car or to the vehicle, we will bear the expenses. And you see, police will also be cool, and things, the people will also be cool, everything will be settled. But if you just unnecessarily argue and then make a big drama of not accepting the mistake, that's a major problem. This is one scenario. Another scenario is maybe there is no mistake on our side. The mistake is completely on the other person's side. You have to see the time, place, situation. But still, better to be there and then deal with the situation and handle it carefully. Sometimes in the village or some people may have some gundas. So we have to handle the situation very carefully. But in either situation, better to take ownership and deal with it properly. Especially being sadhus, we have to be more careful. That's another important aspect. So now, the point I'm discussing here is because Shamika Rishi was quite responsible enough. As a Brahmana, he took ownership. His son's mistake, he took ownership on him. And he said that it's because of the mistake of his son, the entire Brahmana community is now suffering. Then the Rishi prayed to the all-pervading personality of Godhead to pardon his immature boy who had no intelligence and who committed the great sin of cursing a person who was completely free from all sins, who was subordinate and who deserved to be protected. So it is said in the Shastras that till the age of maybe 13 or 14, even if somebody does something, it is not taken very seriously. Even the sin, the reaction or the punishment given is proportionately a little less. Punishment is there, but it is little less for up to this particular age. Prabhupada says in the purport, when an offense is done unto the devotee of the Lord, it is very difficult to overcome the reaction. The Brahmanas, being at the head of the social orders, are meant to give protection to their subordinates and not to curse them. These are occasions when a Brahmana may furiously curse a subordinate Kshatriya or Vaishya, etc. But in the case of Maharaj Parikshit, there were no grounds, as already explained. The foolish boy had done it out of sheer vanity in being a Brahmana's son, and thus he became liable to be punished by the law of God. The Lord never forgives a person who condemns his pure devotee. Therefore, by cursing the king, the foolish Shringi had committed not only a sin, but also the greatest offense. Therefore, the Rishi could foresee that only the Supreme Personality of Godhead could save this boy from his sinful act. Therefore, directly prayed for pardon from the Supreme Lord, who alone can undo such a thing, which is impossible to change. A question may be raised herein that since it was the desire of the Lord that Parikshit Maharaj be put into the awkward position so that he might be delivered from material existence, then why was a Brahmana's son made responsible for this offensive act? Interesting question, no? Prabhupada resolves it. The answer is that the offensive act was arranged to be performed by a mere child so that he could be excused very easily, and thus the prayer of the father was accepted. But if the question is raised, why the Brahmana community as a whole was made responsible, be careful in this purport. See, nice, interesting point. But if the question is raised why the Brahmana community as a whole was made responsible for allowing Kali into worldly affairs, the answer is given in the Varaha Purana that the demons who acted inimically toward the personality of Godhead but were not killed by the Lord were allowed to take birth in the families of Brahmanas to take advantage of the age of Kali. The all-merciful Lord gave them a chance to have their births in the families of pious Brahmanas so that they could progress towards salvation. But the demons, instead of utilizing the good opportunity, misused the Brahminical culture due to being puffed up by vanity in becoming Brahmana. The typical example is the son of Shamika Rishi, and all the foolish sons of Brahmanas are warned hereby not to become as foolish as Shringi and to be always on guard against the demoniac qualities which they had in their previous births. So, okay, I just have thought myself and wrote few examples. Brahma cursed Narada Muni, to become Dasiputra. How did he respond? Then Manduka Muni cursed Yamaraj. How did he respond? And another situation, Dhritarashtra, Duryodhana insulting Vidura. See the responses of all these three personalities, completely different. They accept it as a plan of the Lord. Well, Parikshit also accepting here as a plan of the Lord. So, Mara Chitraketu also. So many examples are there. And you can see in Bhagavatam, so many amazing incidents are mentioned here and again and again. So the devotees of the Lord are so forbearing that even though they are defamed, cheated, cursed, disturbed, neglected, or even killed, they are never inclined to avenge themselves. This is beautiful, no? This is a nice verse. We'll read this verse. Tiraskrita vipralabdha shapta shiptahata api nasyat tat pratikurvanti tad bhakta prabhavopihi. So these are the four things he's saying. They are defamed, cheated, cursed, disturbed, neglected, or even killed. They are never inclined to avenge themselves. So, these are all very high level, I cannot even a small thing, somebody takes my box, somebody takes my some chadar or something, I immediately, my eyes become red and then, this third eye I want to open and then I want to kill him on the spot. Yeah, that is there, our natures are there. But we should also derive inspiration from these great personalities. Otherwise, why we are here? Correct? Yeah, we are. That's why we have to pray to the Lord. My dear Lord, I am having so many lower tendencies. But your devotees are glorious. Srila Prabhupada is glorious. It is all this. Now we are seeing this Ambarish Charitra. Ambarish is glorious. We see Parikshit is glorious. We see all great personalities. They are all so forgiving and they are compassionate. Let me just, get a particle of faith that they have in you. They have the devotion they have in you. So that should be our attitude. And we learn lessons from these great personalities. As such, the devotees are never inclined to counteract personal defamation, curses, negligence, etc. As far as such things are concerned, in personal affairs, the devotees do not care for them. But in the case of their being performed against the Lord and His devotees, then the devotees take very strong action. It was a personal affair, and therefore Shamika Rishi knew that the king would not take counteraction. Thus, there was no alternative than to place an appeal to the Lord for the immature born. Okay, we will stop here. So the remaining two verses also speaks about. Okay, I'll just read the translations. The sage thus regretted the sin committed by his own son. He did not take the king's insult against himself very seriously. So he was also very advanced Brahmana. Shamika also did not take it very seriously. He knew that Parikshit was a very advanced devotee and he never took it seriously. Text 50. Generally, the transcendentalists, even though engaged by others in the dualities of the material world, are not distressed, nor do they take pleasure in worldly things, for they are transcendentally engaged. Okay, Prabhupada makes another interesting point. The king was a devotee and the rishi was a mystic. Therefore, both of them were unattached to the accidental incident created by the supreme will. The playful child was an instrument in fulfilling the Lord's will. This is an entire summary of the whole chapter. So the child was an instrument. Parikshit had to hear the Bhagavatam. Shukadeva Goswami has to take association of Shukadeva Goswami. So the entire narration, the entire incident happened. Okay, we will stop here. So you have any questions or comments, any realizations or any other lessons that you learned or anything else you want to share? Yes, please.
There it was mentioned that Brahma cursed Narada Muni to become a Dasiputra. So, what is the story?
Yeah. See, if you just see the this incident, what was that? When when in the previous life, Upabarhana, yes, as Upabarhana, when he was not glorifying. So at that time he was actually cursed by Brahma, right?
From his own demigods.
All demigods. But even Brahma was also there. That was the whole incident. That was the incident. Maybe specifically I said Brahma, but all the demigods were also there. Probably in some other Purana it is maybe pointed out that Brahma was also. Anyway, okay, so the main essential point is that, okay, who cursed is also there, but how he responded to the curse. He accepted it and he surrendered. But good point out that. I'll also check. I heard this from one devotee, not. Yeah, please, yes.
Mentioned here it was there that even if mistake is not from our side, King says to from his side. Actually, the mistake from my side.
Yeah, okay, I got the question. Yeah, see, there was a Shamika Rishi didn't do anything, but his son did a mess. So that's the whole point. That's why, any leader, guru, mother, father, leader, he's responsible for his students. He's responsible for his dependents. So, and also that's why one should be very sincere in trying to educate, train, and bring their dependents to the proper standard. Sometimes there may be fall downs, there may be somebody may slip away from the path. That is always there. But always the teacher takes the ownership on his side, or the parents take the ownership on his side. Those who are matured, they do it like that. And then also the disciple or the student who also, when he matures, he takes the responsibility on his side, and then he wants to improve on his side also. So that's a whole science. But although the guru may not have a reaction for the foolish activity of the disciple, but still the guru feels that maybe I should. There are some cases where sometimes you see when after repeated instruction, some disciple does some mistake. Sometimes the guru rejects the disciple. Sometimes the guru is very compassionate. He gives so many ways by which he can rectify and come forward. So the time, place, situation, so many things he deals with. But generally, the responsibility is taken up. It's not completely just shrugs off. I have no idea. He doesn't say. But that's why you see sometimes, whenever in some yatra or some school or some college or in some program or in some temple, before somebody comes and joins, we ask, so who has referred you? What is your recommendation? What is your background? What you have done? So somebody has to take ownership. So such and such a temple president or some authority, they says, okay, I'm sending here 4 students. They are well disciplined. They are good. We are in good standing. We are sending for this course. We are sending. So the person who recruit them also takes responsibility. The person who is sending them also takes responsibility, so that everything becomes smooth. So that's the whole idea.
I will give an example of accident.
Yes.
So in that accident means if accident happens and it is not our mistake, but still means what that we should take. Okay,
the point is that what is the point that I was trying to do? It's a very particular incident, particular example, wherein in the Kali Yuga it's a worse thing. Sometimes there may not be anything. The opposite fellow will try to take a lot of money from us. He will be very expert. He'll say, one small scratch would have happened. It costs about some 20,000 rupees. So you have to give 20,000 rupees, he'll say. And he said, no, we have to immediately go to the police. We'll make big drama. So it has to be handled in a very careful way. But if you try to just, if you also you do not know how to handle the situation, you punch him on his face and he punches you, it becomes a big mess. Because it is a different situation. We are part of an institution. We are part of representing a spiritual society. And also when the people look at it, they look at us as sadhus. And so immediately the support will be on the other side. But so the point that I was trying to say is we have to take ownership and you have to handle it very diligently, very carefully. You have to handle the situation. And and also we should see that, okay, maybe there may be sometimes, we should not see for some 200-300 rupees. And then, we say, let's say, we are going for some very important preaching program. Then something happens. And for 200-300 rupees, you want to miss 3,000 people hearing Harikatha. So all those things we have to use our intelligence and see what's the best situation. And sometimes, I'll just tell you one incident. It's reminded me of an incident. In one yatra, there was one devotee. He didn't make any mistake actually. There was there was one foolish boy who came driving a cycle. Such a foolish boy. He's an 8-year-old boy. He came super fast, but this devotee was so alert. He just applied the brake at the right time, and then he just stopped the car, got down from the car, went and then just gave left, right, and center. He shouted at the small boy. Probably bet him also. Bet him a little bit. Because you're a foolish fellow. What you did, you will die. You know what you have done. And this boy, within 30... So they were, they would have stopped, and then I think they were trying to drink some coconut water or something. And then you have to see the situation. They drank coconut water and then they just saw back. There were 500 people surrounding with big sticks, kukri, and so many things they were having, They were asking, who is that rascal who bet our boy? There's he's from some Dalit boy or something. Okay? They all wanted to just, there was no mistake. This devotee was trying to justify it. No, actually, there's another devotee who was very interesting, very smart in the situation, more experienced. He just moved this devotee out. You know what he did there? He just fell flat on the leader. He said, sorry, by mistake. Our devotee, we just bet him, please don't take it seriously. It's all, we are sorry. He just asked for sorry. He didn't mind. And then, why Swamiji, you are asking sorry? That person should come, And then, he just compensated, he just spoke, and then the whole crowd dispersed and amicably faced the situation and they left. Otherwise, it would have been, maybe your devotees would have died, they might have killed also. And they are going for a big preaching program. In their whole car, they were having some thousands of books. And then later they went, and then they had a big book distribution. Everything was first class. But in that particular situation, if the dealing was a little different, it would have been a big mess. You understand? Well, we could have. There is no point. These people are also so low. They can't understand. In that situation, if you have speaker, no Prabhuji, Nyaya has to be established, Dharma has to be established. Yeah, but what to do in this situation? You have to know how to deal with this. So that requires experience. So in that sense, I said we have to take ownership. And then if that's saying we don't know anything, nothing, they will just burn your car. In the village, they don't bother, about all your. They don't bother about anything. They'll burn your car. They'll just cut and then they'll go. So you should know how to handle it. That's all. Anything else? Yes.
In this case, how should we take? How should we understand whether it is the plan of the Lord or Shringi was influenced by Kali?
No, that's very clear from the Prabhupada's purport and from what the Sutta Goswami is explaining. Shringi was influenced by Kali. Shringi was influenced by Kali because he says that was the situation by which, and it also happened that the Lord also had the plan that Maharaj Parikshit should hear the Srimad Bhagavatam. So and Kali Yuga is beginning, so Kali has to come in. So it was like they say, with one stone, two mangoes. So like that, the incident happened. And then there is another thing as again, the discussion happens at the end. The question is raised by, the question is being answered here about how Shamika Rishi prayed to the Lord to forgive the mistake done by the young boy. And then here the Acharyas are explaining that, Srila Prabhupada is also explaining that they wondered why this Shringi was chosen, because it is easy to forgive the reaction because after all he was a small boy, he was a young boy. So yes, there is Shringi was influenced by Kali, otherwise why he should speak like that. But at the same time, for the Kali to enter also, there is also the arrangement of the Lord specifically for Parikshit to speak.
So we understood that Kali influenced Shringi.
Kali
That
influenced
was-
Shringi.
Kali,
Kali, but also the main thing in this, Kali was certainly influenced by Shringi, no doubt about that. Shringi was certainly influenced by Kali. There was no doubt about that. But then again, for this entire incident to happen, the whole background at the beginning only, Shuta Goswami and the whole discussion unfolds that as far as Parikshit is concerned, he could have never ever done such a abominable act, or so not an abominable, such a small act which will cause pain to Shamika. So this act is certainly no question of his previous karma that we read that purport. It's very clear that it is influence of it is just the Lord's influence, that he wanted special arrangement of the Lord, so that he wants to take Parikshit back to him. Then he wanted specifically the Bhagavatam to be spoken. That's the thing.
Shringi being influenced by Kali is also according to the plan of Lord, or
Yeah, it is that also we can say, but specifically also because Kali has to enter in. That is also there. Yeah.
but how Kali could influence him, because already Parikshit had allotted him only 5 places.
No, that's what. No, because that's the whole thing. For the Bhagavatam to take place, Bhagavatam to speak, also Parikshit had to leave this world, and for that some incident has to happen. The Lord has to bring some event. So all this unfolding of events happened.
By the plan of Lord.
Yeah. So in this particular case, we can see the plan of the Lord is definitely there, and also he wanted to allow Kali to. So both the things are involved. It's very difficult to exactly pinpoint, but both influences are there. Sure. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Thank you.